Hi, I'm Arun George, and you're listening to Three Things, the Indian Express news show. In today's episode, we're looking at the Prime Minister's latest attempt to reach out to farmers protesting in the national capital. But first, we're examining the political crisis in Nepal after the Prime Minister of the nation dissolved parliament and called for elections next year. Nepal's Prime Minister KPS Oli has been facing dissent for some time from within the ruling alliance in the country. But in a sudden, unexpected move, he decided to dissolve the nation's lower house of parliament on the 20th of December. The government had 2 years left in its 5-year term. The move was swiftly carried out. On the 20th, Oli met with the president. Then a few hours later, a cabinet meeting was held at the Prime Minister's residence where the decision was taken. And it was promptly approved by the president. The president's office said that a general election would be held in 2 phases, in April and May of 2021. Till then, Oli will stay on as Prime Minister. The decision prompted dissent from the ruling Nepal Communist Party. 7 ministers instantly resigned. Since then, there have been protests by political parties and citizens groups. For India, this political crisis in its neighboring nation comes even as ties seem to be on the mend after a heated border dispute between the two nations earlier this year. So what does Oli's decision mean for Nepal? Can Oli hope to stay on in power till 2021? And why is there so much protest against this decision? To answer these questions and more, we're now speaking with Yubaraj Ghimire, who writes on Nepal for the Indian Express. Yuvraj, could you start by explaining what prompted Prime Minister KPS Oli to dissolve Parliament?
Well, the official statement and address to the nation he made soon after the dissolution on December 15 was, I had almost 2/3 majority was there in Parliament, but the dissidents didn't allow me to work. So the best course, or the only course left for him, he said, was to go to the people to seek their mandate and, not to surrender before the people who were trying to scuttle the mandate. So he made it clear that it was because of the dissident activities within the party led by senior leaders like Pushpakmal Dahal Prachanda, Madhav Nepal, Jhalnath Khanal, and all this, that led to the dissolution of parliament. Although his explanation has been questioned by many because not being able to contain discontent within the party was a failure of the leadership. You were part of that. So you resort to the extreme step that constitution doesn't so easily allow.
But what has the response been from other political parties? You mentioned how many parties felt that there was no need for him to have dissolved parliament. How have they reacted to this?
Well, political parties, including the main opposition Nepali Congress and another larger party, Janata Samajwadi Party, they all have criticized the Prime Minister for this, for dissolution. But what we have seen in the ground is the main opposition Nepali Congress is not very keen to go on the street like other opposition parties. What they are saying possibly is, let's go to the people. Because what Prime Minister did is an act that should not be endorsed. But now that the elections have been announced on April 30th and May 10, the best way to address the situation would be, seek fresh mandate of the people, in a way endorsing what the government has done, what the Prime Minister has done, rather.
And what has the response been from people itself? You've written about how there have been protests and other opposition to this decision.
Yes, people are coming, like the two kind of protest, a parallel protest on the street in Kathmandu now. One is those who belong to, because both sides have claimed to be the real Nepal Communist Party, so we really don't know who to call real. But the party opposed to, NCP opposed to KP Oli, have their supporters on the street. And they have said, they will hit the street, and they are doing it across the country, burning effigy of Prime Minister KP Oli and President Vidya Devi Bhandari, who is also identified with KP in all the legal or illegal or controversial actions that the government has taken. She has always been on Oli's side, almost every day. And there is also a parallel movement in different part of the country going on for almost a month, which they have said will be in a much larger scale. That is for restoration of Nepal as a monarchy, parallel movements going on. It might have an impact on the law and order situation. There is this COVID pandemic people are scared of, whether election is possible in this kind of situation. That's also a debate going on in academic and in a general political circle.
One question would also be, why is there such opposition to the dissolution of parliament? Why is it such an emotive issue? Because a political party dissolving parliament, I mean, would be seemingly normal, right?
Yes, that is true, especially in the Westminster system and the model that Nepal has followed. That should not have been an issue because these things have happened in the past. Like 1993, first parliament under the 1991 constitution was dissolved. Then again, 95, another parliament was dissolved, although that was reinstated by the Supreme Court, calling this dissolution unconstitutional. And there was yet another dissolution in 1998, which was revived by King Gyanendra in 2002. 4 years after it was dissolved, and 2 years after its full term would have expired. But here, the current constitution, which was delivered by the Constituent Assembly in 2015 September, it said that because dissolution of parliament and elections are a costly affair, and there has been a tendency among the leaders to dissolve parliament when their leadership is in crisis, this tendency should be curtailed. And it made a provision that only when all the options to form alternate government are exhausted, the parliament should be dissolved. No such things happen. Oli realized that he was in minority in various bodies of the party, like Central Secretariat, like the Standing Committee, like the Central Committee, and also perhaps in Parliament, which was never tested on the floor. One. Second, the Janta Samajwadi Party leader, Baburam Bhattarai, he said it is about time that the president is impeached. And in Nepal, a very funny kind of practice has begun that in a specified number of parliament, say 25% of the house, with their signature approaching the parliament for impeachment, that person automatically remains suspended from the position. So I think that preparation was also going on. When Prime Minister realized that he was in minority in party and perhaps parliament, and that there is a possibility of a president being impeached, then he hurriedly announced the dissolution of parliament, followed by fresh elections. So, one, it is the new constitution doesn't encourage the dissolution without exhausting the options to form alternative government. That's why prima facie it looks like the Prime Minister overstepped the spirit of the constitution. And second, because President was also in crisis, something Oli didn't want to happen.
Okay, so Prime Minister Oli now aims to run a caretaker government till April 2021, which is when he hopes to hold elections and even hopes to return to power. But does that seem feasible given the current scenarios that are playing out?
Well, no, many people are doubting his intentions. That is, one, it is a COVID pandemic. There are many occasions when Assembly of People has been forbidden by executive orders. So how is it possible in that kind of circumstances to hold elections? So this is a question being raised, but he said it's possible. Now the case is before the Supreme Court. Supreme Court has issued a notice to the government, and also there was the dissidents had claimed that they had given the notice for no confidence motion in Parliament with 83 members' signature. The Supreme Court has also asked for that. And after that, from January 6 onwards, a constitutional bench of the Supreme Court headed by the Chief Justice will be hearing that, possibly in a fast-track basis, almost every day. So let's see what Supreme Court says, but it looks like Supreme Court will have far less role to address the political crisis. It might give its constitutional, opinion or verdict. But whether it will solve the political crisis, whether it will lead to elections, especially pandemic, COVID-19 pandemic, and the impact of this political unrest in law and order situation, are two major likely obstacles in elections being held on the given date.
Another issue that's come to the fore has been the Chinese envoy who has been meeting with the ruling party and has been handling things in a sense when the prime minister was facing dissent within the party. And now she's met Prachanda ahead of a potential power tussle again. What are the concerns over China's involvement so far?
Well, there are concerns about foreign meddling in Nepal's international affair. For China, it's a major setback because they have invested a lot of resources, time, cultivating the Communist Party of Nepal. At times, it also looked like that the CPN, that was in the united form, was almost an extension of Chinese Communist Party. There is also a background to it because Nepal's political change of 2005-6, India had played a lead role. In that, India also was able to bring the European Union and Americans around to the agenda. So after this, China developed a perception that Nepal had substantial presence of the forces inimical to it. Then it stepped up its presence, investment, and engagement with the multiple agencies of the government and various actors. So in the last 7 years, if you take into account from 2016 to 2015, out of these 15 years, last 7, 8 years has been dominated by China in terms of its influence in the local politics. So it was a major setback that China's monopoly impact would be severely impaired by the split in the Communist Party of Nepal. So not only Chinese ambassador has been meeting and supporting Oli in every time of crisis since last April, but high-level Chinese authorities, including ministers, they have been visiting Nepal. But there is anger, growing anger among the people that international forces, including China, before that India, US and EU, they have been meddling in Nepal's internal affairs. And this is about time that Nepalis should take control of their politics.
Yeah, I like how you mentioned the fact that the politics is about Nepal taking charge of its politics, and that has been something that India's faced the brunt of under Prime Minister Oli. Um, could India hope for better ties in the coming days once this settles?
Well, I don't think that will be an automatic kind of thing. Yes, relations have suffered a lot, especially two major events took place in between. That was the economic blockade in 2015 for almost 5 months, and this row of border dispute, Kalapani, Limpiadura, and Lipu Lake. So there has been some kind of thaw at the moment, but it will be very difficult. Because one tendency between India and Nepal is not to address the issues that comes in the way of their friendly relations. They try to push it under the carpet, and sometimes it comes with a larger image that becomes difficult to solve. But both sides, if they understand that Nepal-India relations are very crucial, that has been the basic belief in the past conduct of diplomacy, that basic realization should help in addressing the problem.
Before we get to the next segment, I just wanted your quick attention. One of the big reasons people say that they like this show is because it helps them understand the news better. It provides them with the context they need to see the bigger picture. And there's perhaps no other place that does this better than the Indian Express's Explained section. We on Three Things refer to the section regularly, and it helps us make this show. If you're a regular reader of the newspaper, you know how useful the Explained section can be, especially when you're looking for in-depth analysis by the right experts. You can log into indianexpress.com/explained and access their coverage 24/7. Explained by the Indian Express, where news that matters is explained by experts who know the subject. Now, back to the show.
मैं देश के मैन्युफैक्चरर्स और इंडस्ट्री लीडर्स से आग्रह करता हूं, देश के लोगों ने मजबूत कदम उठाया है, मजबूत कदम आगे बढ़ाया है। वोकल फॉर लोकल ये आज घर घर में गूंज रहा है। ऐसे में अब यह सुनिश्चित करने का समय है कि हमारे प्रोडक्ट्स विश्व स्तरीय हो।
That's Prime Minister Narendra Modi in his monthly radio address to the nation appealing to industrialists. The Prime Minister asked manufacturers to ensure that Indian products have a standard that make them world-class and justify the faith that the nation's people have shown in them with the Local for Vocal campaign. In his speech, the Prime Minister also spoke about the sacrifices made by Sikh saints Guru Gobind Singh and Guru Tegh Bahadur. He spoke about how they strove to protect India's millennia-old culture, civilization and tradition from the cruel misdemeanors of tyrants and tormentors. This bit of the Prime Minister's speech was seen as the latest attempt to reach out to the protesting farmers in the nation's capital. Earlier, Modi had made a visit to a Delhi Gurdwara, and the government had also released booklets on what it said was the Prime Minister's special relationship with the Sikh community. Groups representing the farmers' bodies are scheduled to meet with the government's representatives on Tuesday. On Sunday, during the Prime Minister's speech, the farmers' groups banged on steel vessels as a sign of protest. You were listening to The Three Things by the Indian Express. Today's show was written and produced by me, Arun George, and as always, was edited and mixed by our producer, Joshua Thomas. Before we go, here's another reminder to check out Indian Express's Explained page. You can log on to indianexpress.com/explained and find in-depth analysis by the right experts. It has everything you need to know to understand the news better and see the bigger picture. If you like the show, then do subscribe to us wherever you get your podcasts. You can also recommend the show to someone you think will like it. Share it with a friend or someone in your family. It's the best way for people to get to know about us. You can also tweet us at Express Audio and write to us at podcast@indianexpress.com.